Hey there guys, this is Obsidian Chill, got another video for today, and in this one we'll be taking a look at an in-depth breakdown of the new ally, the Bombshell Harley Quinn. This is available by opening up 25 time capsules of the Joker's Legacy, which was just released a part of the Valentine's Day event on DC Universe Online, which came out just this week. So once you open up 25, you'll get the Harley ally, so it's not going to be on the marketplace or on the Cyborg vendor, it's just going to be like Nubia. So let's take a look here. So we'll look at the damage aspect of it first, and then we'll get into the two passives. So looking at Bon Voyage, parachutes in with a bombshell in tow, hitting all nearby enemies in a single large attack. And at rank 10's that 403 plus damage. Let's actually take a look and actually what that actually means here. So before we jump to the spreadsheet, taking a look at the numbers, we're going to look at two aspects here. So we're going to take a look at what the animation is, so you actually see it. And then actually the Harley ally has a very unique damage splitting aspect, which we'll get into just after you see the animation. You saw it there. So it's actually not too bad damage wise, just because it's a single attack. So the attack and the damage actually happens slightly before the attack, I think, just how it's lined up with the animation. But because with it being a single attack rather than like dot damage or like say like Batman or Laughs where it's damage over time, you don't miss it on ads. So if once you pop it on ads, since it's instant burst damage, you have a very good chance of actually getting all the damage. Where if you're dropping allies, even like Cyborg, if allies die or they're out of position, even attacks like Aquaman, same thing. So it's much nicer of an ally to have the damage up front and burst rather than spread out. Same thing goes for single target. So what is not mentioned here in the actual description of Bon Voyage is that it targets bosses and NPCs separately. So when you take a look at like a typical ally, like it doesn't matter for either one we pull up, say like Batman or Laughs. If we summon Batman or Laughs with a boss and a bunch of ads around it, the damage is going to be equal to each NPC because Batman or Laughs doesn't separate that boss NPC from a regular NPC. It's just another target. Same thing with Cyborg. So if there's Cyborg, a whole bunch of multiple targets on Cyborg with a boss, it's going to split evenly amongst all the NPCs that you get to hit. But Harley's different. So Bon Voyage is actually going to target the bosses and the allies separately. So what I mean by that is we'll jump into an example and show you in the combat log what that actually means. And then we'll jump to the spreadsheets. Okay, so we've got a good example here to show the damage aspect of Harley with the ads. So we're going to bring the ads over here, target the bosses, and then we'll drop Harley. So, and then we'll just kind of piece out of here. Okay, so let's take a better look at the logs here. So you can see the actual damage didn't split on the bosses themselves. Each boss took an equal hit. So the Bon Voyage, Flashpoint Vixen, and Ocean Master, but all the other ads around it still took damage as well. So it still took 50k hits. So even if you have a boss in amongst everything else, instead of the damage splitting like it would with other allies, where their attacks are going to hit will be treated as, instead of an NPC, Harley treats it separately as an NPC and a boss NPC. So the boss NPCs take the major hit, and then all the other NPCs take their typical split damage. So it's the first time we've had a situation like this where an ally will differentiate. Because if you just did like a Cyborg hit, then each one's kind of going to split the hits, or if you do like Batman who Laughs, or like Aquaman, whichever, it doesn't matter what ally you do, each NPC is going to take an equal split damage hit because they're all treated the same. But now we actually have something that treats it differently. So there's lots of great uses for this. There's not a ton of situations where you have bosses and ads. There are some plenty good examples, especially in the current raid. But in any kind of situation like that, this ally is going to be not only great for boss damage itself, but you also have good ad damage as well, in terms of it just all splitting. So that's a very nice feature for Harley, in terms of the damage aspect at least. Okay, so taking a look at Harley's breakdown. Now, Bombshell Harley, when you factor in how it impacts those bosses in terms of hitting them separately and all the other NPCs, technically Harley is now the strongest in terms of damage. Breaking it down by actual comparison, like if you're just doing regular trash mobs, it's not bad, but it's certainly not the top compared to. So here everything's tested at 339. That's why it's a bit lower, just for direct comparison. Eventually I'll update all the allies so they're more current CR. But 260k, this is AoE. Compared to Batman and Last was 279. It's stronger than Newbie at least, stronger than Emperor Batman. I mean, Flashpoint Batman is still stronger with those AoE grenades, and Batman does more damage on a single target. Obviously, Cyborg is still going to be, the clear best one, but that heavily depends on your own positioning. So Cyborg's damage can, kind of range. So that's why Cyborg certainly still has the highest potential out of any single ally for damage, unless you're in a specific situation where you're dealing with those bosses, like I said, because then Harley Quinn will supersede that. And then I did a test just at 359. So on live server, when you're doing it on like 5 targets, this is more realistically what the damage you'd see. Jumping over a single target, not a huge difference really, because it's all burst hit. So there's really not going to be too much varying difference between AoE and single target damage. Same thing, I hit a 359, but the strong suit there is on single target. Say if there's a bunch of ads on the boss and you have to worry about everything splitting, and you're not going to have that higher damage, that higher boss damage, what you're looking for. But then Harley's now the exception for that. So whether or not that, because Harley is a legendary, so still with the legendary ally, you're still looking at 299,000 XP. You're still looking at 272 catalysts combined. So it's still a very large resource investment for Harley. But if you're looking for something that's the highest damage, because the nice thing about Cyborg is that unless you're like a precision DPS, but Cyborg is very handy for just the passive ability. So it's nice to have Cyborg not always in the damage position. And still same thing, there's going to be a lot of situations where, depending on the room size or the positioning of the boss or ads, the Cyborg's projectiles aren't going to do maximum damage. So if you're interested in getting one that's going to be an ally that is good just to use as just for damage and not worry about the passives, then you could put those resources into Harley. Harley is going to be the highest damage aspect from that, or highest damage. I would say highest base damage. Cyborg is still going to have the highest potential damage, but it's certainly, I would much rather use Bombshell Harley over anything else. Because even when you look at Batman and Laughs, they'll do a bit higher damage because those are multiple hits. If you're saying like a hallway and a bunch of players summon allies to DPS the ads, there's a huge chance where the Batman and Laughs damage is not going to actually finish. Same thing with even Cyborg with the projectiles. So he fires the projectiles, but if they miss or some ads die, etc. before, you're going to miss that damage. Or at least with Harley, it's pure burst. Even Nubia, it's still multiple hits. So it's nice having one that's just basically instant upfront damage in Bombshell Harley. So let's jump in and take a look at the passives. So taking a look at Harley Quinn's first passive here. Partner in crime, when transporting an object, receive increased defense and heal for a percentage of your max health every 3 seconds. Now, I put that up on the screen here. What that essentially means, it follows the kind of the same course as the other ally passives, where in terms of each rank, you'll get a small increase. So, say rank 4 is 1.5% and 5% defense, all the way up to rank 10, which is 5% health and 35% defense as you go through the ranks. So what that actually looks like. So transporting an object, ideally it works for fire and ice tanks, just because we got Ice Boulder and Fireball. So taking a look here, right now I'm in tank stance, 14,019 defense. If I pop myself into ice armor, I'm going to have 16,413 defense. And then from here, if I pick up Ice Boulder, I'll jump from 16 all the way to 18,806. Now, I know this doesn't mean much because, this is downscaled in Doom Metropolis, but you get the same concept. Your defense goes up as you picked up the object. When the object breaks, you saw it drop down back to my regular defense. So, in terms of the actual heal, so I don't have Mystic on right now just to show that heal is not going to apply. So, say if I'm in ice armor, wait for that shield just to expire, then I would pick up my object, And the shield's still ticking. There we go. So 1191. So you can see here, since I'm holding the object, I'm getting the increased defense, and I'm also getting that extra heal. Now the same thing would apply also if I pick up, say, like right now I've got super strength. So same thing. So if I do reflect, it's going to pop me into the 16, 413 defense. And if I pick up a car, oh, not actually throw it though. Subway, don't actually throw the car. Okay, so that's round 2. Ice armor, pick up the car, 18806. And as soon as I chuck the car, it's going to drop down just like the ice boulder one to where my ice armor was. So, I mean, it also works for that. So that's in terms of objects. I mean, you're going to have objects in raids too, but it's just that it's easily duplicated with ice boulder and fireball, because we have those, or meteor or whatever. We have those abilities here, rather than in a raid. You're not always going to have access to a lot of objects or open world access to vehicles and stuff like that. But let's see if we can jump over to like Flashpoint Gotham or something, just to show like more of like an upscaled meaning here. Because like ice boulder. Be nice if I use the correct terminology. You know, it's nice for boss fights, because if you throw it, technically you don't have to have like Inescapable Storm or something like that to gain your aggro. You can use ice boulder to gain your aggro and toss it. Now the thing is, if you have adds in those fights, if you throw ice boulder, it's going to launch that ad. So it's really not realistic at all if you're going to be in any kind of fight with NPCs or even a boss or NPCs, because every time you throw ice boulder to gain that like range aggro, it is going to toss those ads everywhere, and that can't be prevented, and because you're going to be over the dom cap regardless. So that's why, say if it's just a single boss fight, you could use that in combination. Like you could pick up ice boulder, you gain that heal, that extra heal, which I mean 5% is not going to be a ton, but it's still going to help. Plus you gain that extra defense when you pick up the boulder, and then you just toss it right at the end to keep your aggro on the boss. So I mean that's a possibility how that could work. And we'll try to show that on Doomsday here. So let's hop over to Flashpoint Gotham and show more of like an upscaled example here. Okay, so more of a realistic example here. We got Doomsday. I'm still not going to run Mystic, so you're going to be able to see whatever heals I get are going to be from the actual Bombshell Harley, partner in crime. So if I'm approaching a boss fight here, all I'm doing is, instead of using Inescapable Storm or any kind of like Frost Sniper or anything like that, I'm just going to use Ice Boulder as the actual aggro. And then I can keep picking it up here. You see that I'm getting that heal. And just chuck it to gain aggro between my shields. So I can still pick it up, get my heal increase, get back in range if I have to, get the extra defense for equipping the object. Of course, now I just jump clip the summon there, so that doesn't help. But pick it up, get my heal, toss it to keep aggro. So it works great from a kiting aspect, because if I get hit picking up, I have that extra defense. So just as he lunged me there, I had that defense, I got that heal. And then I can keep kiting. Just picking it up, get that heal, throw it, and then I still have the healer protect me. Obviously, it's not like I'm super depending on that heal for surviving or anything like that. But the same concept. I can pick it up, get that little boost of movement, picking up the object, get my heal, and then I kind of keep everything at range. So the only issue is, like I said before, if there's a bunch of other NPCs in this fight, it is going to send them flying, which is not what I want to have happen. But it's very easy to keep, a ranged taunt up each time I get the heal, or I can even keep the, if I want to keep that extra defense, I don't have to throw it right away. I can pick it up and hold it until it disappears and still have that extra defense. So while it's something it's not going to work in every single situation, it's something that kind of gives like a unique play style to a tank. I mean, you can kind of experiment around with it. I still say that the second passive is going to be more helpful for a tank in terms of having that soldier drop by 50% by having the extra defense as well for 6 seconds with a spy drop. But I mean, at the same time, spy drop you're only going to use ever so often. it's not like a passive egg here where I can have access to it every 6 seconds. So it's just, all it is really, it's Harley Quinn giving tanks, or I'd say, I should clarify, giving ice tanks and fire tanks realistically more of a unique playstyle, being able to use Meteor and Ice Boulder. And other tanks where, if you're doing like an open world raid, sure, you can pick it up. I'm not sure if I can pick up these vans with super speed. No, it has to be a vehicle. I don't think there's any vehicles here in Flashpoint Gotham. But there's some brides that have objects as well. So that's all it is. It's giving, I wouldn't say it's a gimmick, because it is helpful having an extra defense to take those hits and the small heal, especially as fire. 5% of your health as fires can be much more than ice tank. Plus, that tank really, I'm not in tank gear, as I said before. So I'm just wearing DPS gear and have it switched over to tank. So really my health would be a lot higher in tank gear, in buffs, etc. like that. So that heal that you get from picking up the object is basically like a free self-heal every 6 seconds. So it also could be helpful for like doing open world content or doing duos or solos or alerts or whatever if you don't have a healer. It gives yourself not only, so in a combination with Mystic or in a combination with other artifacts to give you a heal, every 6 seconds you get a self-heal as ice. And ice, doesn't really have that self-heal like fire would. Or as fire, you have your same thing. Every time you use Meteor, you got Meteor Backdraft. It just adds another self-heal to your ability, picking it up and just gaining that heal for the first 3 seconds. You don't have to keep the object. You can pick it up just for the initial heal. So, yeah, mindful. It's not as practical from the other tanks. Just depends if there's objects in the raid or an open world with a vehicle. But very practical for ice and fire. Just something to mix up the playstyle. Okay, so taking a closer look at Bombshell Harley Quinn's second passive, which is Bombshell Ordinance, it works a little bit different than what we're used to with allies. Most of the time with allies, when you increase the rank from 6 to 10 until it's maxed out, each passive that you had before either gets like longer duration or is more effective, etc. It's not like a brand new ability each rank, where Bombshell Harley is a little bit different from that. So you do actually grant almost each rank is a brand new ability. So rank 6, we can see here, I'll put up on the screen here as well so you can see it. You get 1 second of 30% defense increase, and then 5 seconds of 15% increase. So also excuse is all undefined text. I think, see the test server or my test server build, something's up with it, but just ignore that for that sake. And then you'll see at rank 7, we grant a 15-second Soda cooldown. So basically we get 15 seconds less on our Soda cooldown. So if we break through to 7, rank 8, now it's going to say we get 1 second of 65% defense, and then followed by 5 seconds of 35% defense. So it's not a brand new ability, it's also enhancing what we got at rank 6, but it is changing each time. And then we'll go through to 8. And now rank 9. Same thing, we get that 1 second, but now the Soda cooldown doubles from 15 to 30 seconds. And then we'll break through to round 9 and show you what 10 is going to be. And 10 grants a new ability, which is 15% bonus movement speed for 6 seconds. So really the Bombshell Ordinance gives us 3 different abilities. It gives us extra defense, it gives us a cooldown on our Soda, and it also gives us bonus movement speed. So with those 3 abilities across the 4 levels, or 4 ranks, then you have those differences. So it's trying to make it much more beneficial, useful. How that actually looks in practice, let's jump into that now. So taking more of a look into Bombshell Harley being that tank-focused ally, taking a look at the first part of Bombshell Ordinance, which is the defense aspect of it. You may think that even 1 second of extra defense or 5 seconds of the 35% defense is inconsequential, but really using the right situations, it can be very helpful. Considering that tanks don't even run supply drops normally, you'd have like your health, like a 5% health trinket, you'd have your DPS trinkets, you'd have your breakout trinket, and like an orbital henchman. You can kind of swap it in, especially if you're using like Philosopher's Stone to help the group. But generally, tanks aren't going to run supply drops, where at least now Bombshell Harley Quinn gives us that opportunity to not only expand on tanks using supply drops, but also giving those extra added bonuses. So we'll touch on how helpful that soda cooldown is, and then we'll take a look at the bonus movement. But taking a look at the defense right now. So I'm not even in tank gear. I'm just in DPS gear. So at this point, don't think of the defense too mindful. But technically, I'm in a tank setup, 140,000 base defense. Now if I go into ice armor, we're sitting 168,000. And now if I drop that supply drop, you go up to 220,000, then down to 196 for those extra 5 seconds. So really, it's 6 seconds when you have to think about it of increased defense on top of already your ice armor. So especially coming from the point of view as like an ice tank, you're already mitigating your damage through shields, but you're going to be mitigating it even more because your defense through a 6 seconds. So, when you say you don't have access, like say Winter Ward or Hard Light Shield are on cooldown, and you dealt with only like say Shadow Restraints or Reflection being a weaker shield, you could pop a Spy Drop on Reflection, get that extra defense for the 6 seconds, survive through Reflection even though it's a weaker shield, giving you time to get Winter Ward and Hard Light Shield off cooldown, as well as getting your Soda reset, which basically, when you think of the Soda, which we'll touch on the cooldown in a sec here just to show you, but when you think of a Soda, you don't really think of it as recovering power. At least I don't think of it as a tank. I basically have my Soda, when I tank, I have my Soda on my spacebar so I can hit it instantly without even thinking about it. It's more like a reflex just to hit it. And think of it, especially as a Bottle City Soda, the damage up to 8% of max health to the group. I mean, whatever, I don't even pay attention to that, but I look at it more as a full health recover. So especially as it doesn't even have to be ice, it could be a fire tank. So really, you're running, as a fire tank buffed, you'd be sitting on probably, I think when I was tanking the raids, it's going to be around like 500,000-600,000 health buffed. So really, that's a 600,000 health recover just by hitting your Soda. So if you can get your Soda 30 seconds faster, because it goes from a 60-second cooldown to when you hit a Spy Drop with Harley Quinn, it's going to be minus 30 seconds. So that means in you shave off half the cooldown on a full health recover. So you don't need the healer, or same thing. It's even a healer running like say Page of Destiny or like Orb doesn't matter. Like you can always the tank you're gonna take the damage. So because your loadout. So if I have like Winter Ward and Hard Light Shield off cooldown and I know a big hit is coming, I can hit Reflect and immediately be ready for hit that Soda because I know that the damage is gonna go right through Reflect because Reflect's gonna be weaker. And then I can just basically, as soon as you see that red screen or see your health dip, the healer may not really be paying attention or depending on that page proc, but you're going to dip down in health and you take that Soda right away. It's like a reflex. So it's happened tons of times where a Soda will save me just because you dip in health, take the Soda, you're back up to full, which gives the time for if you're going to continually take damage, then the page proc can kick in, etc. So it's one of those things where you may think like shaving off the cooldown of your Soda is more like gimmicky, but really taking half the time on that cooldown and having your Soda every 30 seconds. Well, that's not going to be every 30 seconds, but basically if you're in a bind, it just depends on how you are in the situation. So you can use it almost as a shield at that point. So like Hard to Shield is a 30-second cooldown. So if you lose your Hard Light Shield, your Winter Ward's off cooldown, it's like, okay, crap, I'm going to need something to survive until I have these powers back. Then you can motion your Spy Drop. So you could take a Soda, pop a Spy Drop, or even if already Soda's on cooldown, drop a Spy Drop to get it even further decreased. So that's how you have to look at it from that aspect. So it's something that you may not think is really beneficial, but it actually is very beneficial when you think about it. The movement mode, bonus movement mode. Let's get back our Spy Drop and kind of show you that here. So give me 1 second here. We'll get through the magic of a reset. We'll get the Spy Drop back. Okay, so now that we have our Spy Drop back, let's clip that with, usually when I summon a Spy Drop anyway, I'm going to clip it with my Soda. But say, for example, you wanted to clip it and then you'll see that cooldown. So we'll do that here. And you'll see just how quickly that Soda is going back down. So like I said before, as a tank, I use my Soda, don't think of it as a shield, but I use my Soda as a regular heal in my rotation. Because I either save it for when I know, like say the healer goes down or a situation like that. Especially if very handy is fire because you're getting like a full health recovery. So you're getting like 500-600k health. Max power too out of a Soda. So it's one of those things where every tank should have the Bottle City Sodas because it's infinite and it gives you're guaranteed full health, full power. But you saw how quickly that came back. That was like nothing. So you can really factor that into your rotation. So now let's kind of focus on, before I actually show you the movement speed, we can kind of get a gauge on how it's going to be like. So it says 15 bonus movement speed for 6 seconds. So if we go to another ally here, and if we go to zoom, so zoom is the same thing. So you remember from my test with zoom being increases non-combat movement speed. So if we go to zoom and actually fortify it here, we're going to see that the actual percentage is a 20% speed increase for movement speed. And then the supply drop Bombshell Harley Quinn is giving us 15%. So if you go back to my testing on the passives, basically the zoom from 0 to 20% was about 2 seconds difference. So basically without zoom, my movement speed was about 8 seconds to do like a race basically, or do a measure of distance. And then with zoom maxed at 20%, it was minus 2 seconds. So 6 seconds. So really, with it being 15%, it's not going to quantify into that much of a difference. Really, it's going to be like a 1%, around 1% faster, which I mean still can be helpful because, for example, say you're doing like an ally, not even ally, but you say you're doing an NPC that targets like a spot drop with a grenade, like it happened in Machine Elite. I forget which one of the side bosses was, but it was basically, was it Cyborg? No, Cyborg wasn't in that one. I can't remember, but it was, either way, in Machine Elite, basically you drop a supply drop, he would fire like a grenade at the supply drop, and basically it would just damage the people around it. So, for example, if you really needed a supply drop, you could drop it, have the increased defense for the 6 seconds, and have the faster speed to get out of the way. So it's just situations like that, then it becomes beneficial. But really, I wouldn't focus too much on the most movement speed, especially with being ranked 10 anyway. It's something that'll be helpful, but it's certainly something that like you don't want to depend on. It's not like you got like super speed. It's not like you have this like extra huge sprint burst speed for like 6 seconds when you drop the supply drop. Think of it like zoom. So yes, you do see the difference in zoom, but really seeing that difference for only 6 seconds, it's not going to really be enough. It may be a situation where you can factor it in where, say, a player dies and you drop a supply drop or clip a supply drop and then basically try to race towards that res to get the revive. I mean, a situation like that I could see being viable, but even then, it's not like tanks are super dependent on revives anyway. It should be the controller. But a situation like that technically could happen if you need to cover that distance a lot faster. So some closing thoughts on Bombshell Harley Quinn as an ally. Even though it's all going to come up as undefined. So here's my list of undefined allies. I know it's going to look great in the video, but sorry, I can't help that. Not sure what that's causing it. But regardless of the fact, Bombshell Harley Quinn is certainly going to be a useful ally. On the damage side, it's got the potential to be the strongest damage-wise when there are a boss and multiple allies. And pure single target, like House of Legends bot, even Cyborg, even Flashpoint Batman, they're still going to win out just because of the double hits. So like House of Legends bot, Flashpoint Batman, we'll see double hits on the single target hits, and the Cyborg, depending on the positioning, can also do well. So still your highest potential for pure single target damage is going to be, these are going to trump Harley. But in certain situations, Harley will trump other allies, especially even more handy like when you've got, like, say, Batman or Last, even though you shouldn't really be using Batman or Last for damage, you should be using it for the passive. But say like Nubia or like Aquaman or even Cyborg, sometimes you'll need that Cyborg for the passive, depending on your playstyle. But Harley Quinn could be very good in AoE situations just because of that damage upfront burst. In terms of his passive, it's more geared towards tanks. I would certainly rather have Harley Quinn than like a Queen Diana. Because the whole taunts enemies, it's not that great actually in practice. It's delayed. The weapons debuff is kind of unnecessary. The might aspect isn't going to help. If Flashpoint Batman with his defense, even though it's solo or vice versa, or the health increase for proccing a weapon buff, there's no really pure tank ally. Nubia got close in terms of the countering aspect of it, but even then, the heals aren't that great of it, and you still have the counter. It's not necessarily something you're always going to be doing. So Harley Quinn's has their 100% uptime, and certainly in terms of partner in crime. And Bombshell Ordinance kind of gives a different play style in terms of a supply drop and being helpful. So I would say, Harley Quinn, it's not going to be an ally that you want to race out and max up to legendary. It's not that level yet. Cyborg is still 100%. Flashpoint or Batman or Laughs is still 100%. Those are about the only allies that are about 100%. Nubia is helpful, but it's more so not. It's just as long as one is Nubia for the kind of the might increase. I mean, House of Legends bot is also an automatic 100%, but I mean that's a rare, so it's super cheap anyway. But Harley Quinn is certainly one I would favor over a lot of the legendaries. Like I would still take Harley over like Batman. I would still take it over Nubia because at least it's useful in multiple different ways. I would still take Harley over Queen Diana. Emperor Aquaman has the potential. I know his passives kind of be hit or miss sometimes. In terms of the pet damage and having that actually work properly, and supercharge reduction can be quite powerful. So Aquaman is certainly something you want to have in addition to it, but I wouldn't necessarily say Aquaman's better than Harley Quinn. Depends on your build. Say if you're like electric or like rage, something with like a quick supercharge, then yeah, you're going to want that because you're going to be using it or supercharge so often. You get your ally more damage, etc. So that's about where it stands. The funny thing is why this video didn't come out like very early on test servers, because Harley Quinn like completely changed from how it was in the beginning. The damage wasn't anywhere in terms of how it's splitting on the bosses. You had a passive, you had Partner in Crime was still there, but your second passive was about like increases like your exobyte yield in terms of farming exomatter in open world, like completely, practically useless. So Harley Quinn, the developers have certainly done a really great job at taking feedback and completely turning Harley around into like a useful legendary. Compared to some of the other ones where, it's quite expensive to level. Like, I mean, Batman, he's quite expensive to level up because he's legendary. The 300,000 XP, 272 catalysts, and he's not really that worth it compared to where, Nubia as a player, at least you'd be able to benefit the damage. So if you're like a controller or healer and you're not going to be using any of the tank features, the supply drop aspect can still be helpful to you, reducing your soda cooldown. But really, if you're a non-tank player, you'd be taking Harley for the damage aspect, and then your passives would be Cyborg and Batman Who Laughs. Batman Laughs should be the automatic. This should be the one ally you level above anything else because the Cyborg and House of Legends is so cheap. But really, if I had to choose 4 allies right now, it'd be Cyborg number 1, House of Legends number 2, Batman Laughs 3, and Harley Quinn 4. That's about my 4 because you can only use 3 allies, but really covering those 4 covers a lot of situations. Because the rest are kind of a bit gimmicky in terms of their aspects, but it's very, very useful. So, any questions or concerns, put them in the comment section, and I'll answer your questions about Harley. Take care, guys. Thanks for watching.